So I thought of this really cool little practice regimen recently. Initially, I just wanted to work on some different ways to navigate playing over some changes, but it actually turned into something a little bit different. The idea was to limit the kind of vocabulary I allowed myself to play with, but be able to use that same vocabulary everywhere on the fretboard and in all 12 keys. So I wrote myself a little sequence that included a major chord played in all keys and a minor chord also played in all keys. The sequence can actually be played in any order you like, but I chose to start it with a major chord, followed by a minor chord, followed by a major chord, and so on. So for example, it could be F major, followed by B flat minor, followed by E flat major, followed by A flat minor, and so on. Any order is fine, but the entire regimen needs to cover every single key. So next I decided to set up each new chord with a dominant 7th chord, and that chord would last a whole measure. So just to give you an example, I would play F major for 2 bars, followed by F7 for 1 bar. That sets up the next chord, which would be B flat minor for 2 bars, followed by 1 bar of B flat 7, which again sets up the next new chord of E flat, and so on. Get the idea? I'm simply setting up each new chord with a 5 chord. So I also gave myself some improvising rules to play with. First, on each major chord, I would improvise using just a major scale. On each dominant chord, I would limit myself to using a diminished line or diminished chord tones. And to do this, I personally like to think of a dominant chord with a flat 9 on top, so I can see diminished lines easily. Finally, on each minor chord, I would use notes from the melodic minor scale. As much as I can, I try to follow a stepwise train of thought, so the new starting note of the new chord should be no more than a step or two away from the last. This forces you to play in some uncomfortable areas. So the interesting thing that results from this discipline is that it sounds a lot like Johann Sebastian Bach. It's quite classical. Try it for yourself. It's extremely challenging and great for working on chord tones in areas of the fretboard that might be out of your comfort zone. Anyway, here's an example I recorded. It's not perfect by any means, but you can tell it was improvised.